Good morning, everybody. We're going to continue with Module 8, and I think we'll have some time toward the end to do the in-class module together as well for Module 8. I think it was Case 1. So what I'd like you to first do is we saved the workbook with the embedded macro before we left. Okay, so it was a little bit different format. Instead of XLSX, we put an M at the end. Okay, so it has a macro. So looks like this one. Okay, has a little exclamation point beside it. If I bring that up, we'll see that it says, macros have been disabled, and we can enable content. Why does it say that? Because when we set the macro security, if you guys recall, that was usually the default. We said disable with notification. So it's disabled it at this point. We have to notify it, or it's notifying us that it's disabled. We have to click enable content for our macro to be enabled. Okay. So if you recall last class, we built a macro called PDF invoice that when we enact it, it'll take that invoice area, set it as the print area, and then print us an invoice. That actually creates some code. So if we go up here to developer and we go to macros, and we should see our PDF invoice macro. If we go to edit that macro, it brings up in a separate window a bunch of code. Okay, and this is Visual Basic code. And you'll see at the beginning of it, it says sub PDF invoice, and sub stands for subroutine, because basically what happens is when I invoke PDF invoice, it goes to this subroutine and enacts this code. At the very end of it, you'll see end sub. Okay, so this is what happens at the end. Now, as I said, this kind of coding isn't something that we're particularly going to do in this class. Okay, but I wanted to show you what's going to happen, because if you have a Visual Basic class, you may be able to understand this a little bit more. But there are some things in here that I'm sure you can see what it's doing. Okay, for example, this line right here says range E2 to K23 select. Okay, so that's, if I wanted to change that, well, I could re-record the macro, or I could change the code right here. It says active sheet, page setup, print area, set it to E2 through K23. So if I wanted to change the print area to something smaller in this macro without re-recording the whole damn thing, I would change that range. Okay? So I could change this code and save it as appropriate. Now, if we wanted to change it, let's change it to, let's not play around with it. But if we wanted to change it, we could change it here, and then we could save it and close it, and that macro would be changed. Okay, so that macro would be changed. Like I said, that's kind of outside the scope of this class, so I'm not going to bother with it, but I did want to show you, what we're actually doing when we create a subroutine like that. So let's just X out of that window, and it'll take me back to my original spreadsheet. Now, one thing that I did was I have this macro, and I have a couple different ways I can run that macro. God bless you. God bless you again. I can go up to macro and then run a PDF invoice. I can also use the shortcut key I assigned to it. But a lot of times, we're talking about building an application. A lot of times, we're turning this over to someone, who may not want to use control keys or may not want to go up into the developer tab. So another thing we can do is we can build a button for them. Okay, so go to the right side of your spreadsheet, if you will. Okay, so you can see some room over there. Okay, now I want you to go to the developer tab. And in the developer tab, there is an insert. Okay, so these are different form controls, and if anyone's ever worked in Visual Basic, I know some of you had a Visual Basic class. There are things like check boxes and combo boxes and option buttons, or sometimes called radio buttons. All these kind of things, text boxes we can use. Well, the one we want to select, okay, in the control group, is we want to select the button. Okay, so select this button that's in the upper left corner. And then it goes away, but drag your mouse over, just take your mouse over to this area, and you see you have a little, it turns into a crosshair. So if we left click and then drag it out, we're making our button here. Okay, and it says, okay, you made your button. What do you want to assign to it? Okay, so we want to assign PDF invoice to this and click OK. Now if we click on this button, you'll see it now runs our PDF invoice macro. Button 5 isn't a great description for our button. So let's right click on it, go down to edit text, and let's change it to print invoice. So now we have a control that a user can use to enact this macro. Okay? And later we'll play around with some of those other controls that we saw in that developer grouping. So any questions on that? Jennifer?
My insert button isn't up. How do you...
Your insert button?
Like it's grayed out.
Did you enable macros when you opened it? So when you're on the developer tab, is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
And this is grayed out?
Yes.
Anything else grayed out?
The document panel. Everything else is the same.
Maybe you have, go to, I think you maybe have the worksheet protected. Go to review, go to your review tab, and see if does it say protect sheet or unprotect sheet on yours?
Unprotect.
Okay, unprotect your sheet. I think you still have it protected. Click on unprotect sheet, and is it now is it ungrayed out or
Yeah.
non-grayed, I guess, like you said? Okay. All right. So save this. We're done with this. We're gonna do a little bit, a quick little review exercise, and then we'll do our in-class module, okay, where we're going to build a macro. So you can save this if you like, but here's what I'd like you to do. Go to Blackboard, go to Module 8 data files. And we haven't been doing this, but go to the review. And bring up the rentals worksheet. We're not going to do all these, but let's do a couple, just to see what we can remember. It wants us to take B5 and give it a defined name of type of car, B6 and give it a defined name of days rented, and B7 a defined name of miles driven. So how would you do that? How would you do that? We can do it a couple different ways. What's one way we could do that? We want to give B5, B6, and B7 defined names. There was others, but let's say B5, B6, B7. How would I do that? Simply, how would I do that?
Like A5, A6, A7,
And what else?
like reference it over or something.
Okay, so you're right. One way we could do it, let's do it the simple way first, okay? What we could do is we can go to B5, and if we want to call it type of car or type car, what's the easiest way to do this? What's the, well, not the easiest, but the one way, the direct way to do it?
Type in the top left box.
Okay, so the name box over here, type car. Okay, let's do one Dan's way as well. So let's select A6 through B7. A6 through B7. And in this case, we want to create defined names. We'll go to the formulas group, and under formulas tab, and under the defined names group, click create from selection. And remember, we could say top row or left column. Let's say left column and click OK. Oops, I want this one. So now you see number of days rented is the defined name for B6, and number of miles driven is the defined name for B7. So, a couple different ways we can do that, yes? When we use defined names, we said it's good practice to do what? When we use defined names, it's good practice to do what?
Put them on the documentation sheet.
Yeah, so if we do that, we can go over to documentation sheet, and we can say, over in define names, under the formula tab, paste names, and I'm going to paste them all. So by clicking paste list. So now we have defined, hey, this is type of car is B5 in the customer worksheet. Number of miles driven is B7 in the customer worksheet. B6 is number of days rented in the customer worksheet. Okay, so that was one of the things we did in this module, which can be very useful to make our spreadsheet more user-friendly, more usable to anyone involved. There's one other aspect I want to hit in here. Let's put in some validation rules. Okay, let's put in some validation rules. So for B5, let's go to the customer. For B5, type of car, okay, where I have type of car, I only want them to be able to put in this type of car: compact, intermediate, full, luxury, or minivan. Okay, that's all I want them to be able to put in. So how do I do that? How am I going to do that? I want to only them to be able to put in those types of cars into B5. How would I do that? What tab would I go to? Go ahead, Robbie.
Data validation.
Okay, so if I go to the Data tab, and under the Data tab, there's Data Validation. and I'm going to go to data validation. And instead of saying allow any value, I'm going to say allow a list of values. And it's going to want to know what list do I want to allow. The list of values that I want to allow are from, looks like A12 to A16. Okay. If I want it to be an in-cell dropdown, I just check the in-cell drop-down checkbox. Okay, it probably makes sense to do that, given the option. And I click OK. So now, this is what we have in here. I try to put something else in. By default, it stops it. Okay, it stops that. What else can I do in data validation to help the user know what the heck they should be entering? What else can I do in data validation to help the user? Yes, Leah?
You could put like an error in.
Okay, I can put an error in, and I can also assist them with an input message, right? Mm-hmm. So if I go, and this is also under data validation, if I go under input message, you know, as soon as they select that cell, I can say, please, or let's say type of car for the title, please enter either, you know, compact, intermediate, etc. And I click OK. So that message, as soon as I select that cell, that input message comes up. So it helps the user navigate the worksheet. What the heck am I supposed to do here? Well, this tells us what we're supposed to do here. The other thing Leah mentioned, which is important when we talked about data validation, is under data validation there are really 3 tabs. We talked about settings, we talked about input message. The other one is the type of error alert that we put out when it violates what we're doing. Okay, by default, it is stop, which means it cannot do it. It says, I will not allow this in here. This is the most severe of the error alerts. Warning allows us to do what? If we change it to warning, what's it allow us to do? Or allow the user to do when they violate the data validation? Yeah, you can override it. You can say, I know what the hell I'm doing. I want to sell 50 tickets, or I have a new class of car, whatever it might be. Yes? Okay, so we can ignore it. They say, do you realize this? Now, information, a little bit different. How is information? What is information? It also comes up with this error message, but it doesn't really stop it. It says, okay, this is fine, but I wanted to let you know that this isn't normal, right? This isn't what we expected. So those are things that we went through. Let's see, one other aspect in this review exercise that I thought was important. Let me see if I can find it again. Okay, so we want to enter in H9 a charge per day. Okay, and the charge per day is based on the type of car that they have selected. So either intermediate, compact, full, luxury, minivan. How would you suggest I do this? How would you suggest that I do this? Zach?
If statement?
I could do an if statement, right? So I could do if compact, put in 39, right? Or I could say if compact, put in B, what, 12, if intermediate, else if, it'd be a nested if statement, right? Because there's 1, 2, 3, 5 outcomes. Okay, I prefer not to do that, right? Because it would work. You can make that work. There's no doubt you can make that work. So what do you think might be a better, more simplistic tool to do that? Allie? Yeah, let's enter a VLOOKUP here. Okay, so if we do equal VLOOKUP, remember it wants the value to look up. In this case, we're doing the type of car, which because we gave it a defined name of type car, it doesn't put in B5 or whatever it is. It puts in type car, which is nice. It wants the range or table I'm going to look up things in. And I'm going to say, well, and I probably would have given this a defined name too. I think it asked us to do that, but I didn't. A12 to C16. Okay, what column do I want to return here? What column, if I do find a match, what column do I want to return? The second column of the table. And do I want an approximate match or an exact match in this case? I want an exact match. So I'm going to put in false. Oops. So intermediate is $45. I think that's all I want to cover on that one. Okay, I think those were kind of some of the aspects that we're not going to cover on the in-class case that I wanted to recover there. So let's get rid of that then. Save it if you like, but I'm just going to vamoose it. And we're going to do together, I believe the one I want you to do, let's see. In class case module 8, case 1. Okay, so we want to do case 1 in class. So bring up Metatrax. Metatrax controls a U.S. subsidiary of a European multinational corporation. Is testing an HVAC system designed to eliminate large temperature variances in its medical storage rooms. Lisa Goodman is a producer tester for Metatrax. Each week she records 25 temperature readings, 5 samples each day, in an Excel workbook, and at the end of the month, Lisa sends the results to the parent company's quality department. Because many repetitive steps occur in developing the output requested by the parent company, Lisa asks you to create a macro to speed the creation of the report and reduce chances for error. Complete the following. Okay, so the first thing it wants us to do is obviously, add our name and date. So I'll do those two things. And this is often the case. Like, think about it. If every day, you do something, to a certain input file, you take an average of this and you add this and you format this way. If you do the same damn thing over and over again, well, that is a perfect opportunity for some kind of automation, right? So instead of you doing all those steps every day because you have bad mornings and your time is precious, create a macro that does it the same way every morning. Okay, and all you have to do is enact the macro. And that's what we're talking about here. And obviously it makes sense, especially if I do it more than one time. For example, I don't know what's going to happen in this case, but if we did it for every week, then it really does make sense to create a macro to do that. So let's do this one. So it says, create a macro to convert the worksheet to the one shown in figure 837. So in 837, just looks like it has a little different format than the one we're using. Name the macro, convert data. Okay, so assign the shortcut key Control+D and insert the macro description. Automate the weekly temperature reading report. The macro performs the following steps. Okay, so let's go up here to the Developer tab. And I want to start the creation of a macro by clicking on what? Let's record the macro. It wants us to call this convert data. Wants us to use Control-D. And the description of our macro is to automate the weekly temperature reading report. So you notice now that we are recording our macro, at the very top it says stop recording, telling us that we're in record mode. And also down here on the ready status, we have that stop button as well that tells us, hey, we're in the process of recording. The time delay between steps doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if I take 10 minutes between steps, it's going to do them in milliseconds, right? So it doesn't matter how long I take. So go slow and steady. It first wants us to format the dates in the column using a certain type. So let's highlight the dates, and we will go to the Home tab. Go down to date, and it wants us to use month, month, day, day, year, year, I believe. So select this one. It wants us to format the times in the time column so that they are formatted in 24-hour format. So use 1330 for 1:30, I guess. And click OK. It wants us to type Celsius in D1. It wants us to convert the Fahrenheit to Celsius. So we're going to do 5 divided by 9 times, I guess it would be C2 minus 32. And then drag that formula down. Boom. It wants us to convert that to only 1 decimal place. It would like us to bold the headings and center them. and make Fahrenheit fit. In A27, it would like us to write averages. And it would like us to average, looks like the Celsius temperature. So equal average D2 through D26. I'd like us to bold it. Doesn't do it in the case, but I'm going to do this. Highlight the whole deal. Let's make it a table, because I like nice table formats. So click Insert, Table. Let's say I'm a, let's pick a nice, I like orange. Pick a nice format, orange format. And I would like to get rid of the drop downs. So under data, I can get rid of filter. Okay, so we're done. So let's stop the macro. So now we built this macro. There was, I don't know, 5 minutes worth of work there that we did to format this, to put in whatever the company likes. We want to do that for week 2 and week 3 because they're not in the same format the company likes. So this is where I'm going to be able to save myself some time, hopefully. So I'm going to go up to Developer. I'm going to go up to Macros. I only have one macro, and it's called Convert Data. I'm going to run it. And I have a runtime error. Did you guys get a runtime error?
Yeah.
Same place as me? Okay, let's see if we can figure it out. So it looks like it did almost everything, didn't it? Looks like it did all the averaging. Looks like it did the formatting. Looks like it did part of the table. So let's debug it. It's going to take me into the code. Let's exit out of that. What do you guys think the problem is? I think I know what the problem is. What do you guys think the problem is?
Filters?
No?
The only thing we did different was hitting on the bottom of the screen instead of the top.
That's true. That could be an issue, but it's not in this case.
Is it because there's already a table 1 created?
Yeah, so what happened when it created the second table? So when it created the second table, what is this table name? The first table was named what?
Table.
Table 1. when I record that macro, this one's called table 1-1. And I couldn't find it because there's no table 1 in this deal. Let's see if we can fix it. I'm not sure we can. But let's have some test spaces. So let's make a copy of week 3, just so that we have a couple weeks. And we're going to try it over here. And I know it's going to debug or end, but let's try it over here. So I'm going to try using my shortcut key, Control D. And it's going to crap out here, it looks like, at the same place.
Mika,
Yeah.
if you change the name in the first one, it'll come up exactly.
Excuse me?
If you change the name in week 1 to just table, it'll come up. Like,
Yeah, right.
the format will come up.
Right, but you don't want to. You don't want to have to do that every time. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to think of how to change this code so it's variable. You know what I mean? So that the name is equal to table 1 is more of probably what we should have done. Okay, is instead of me just, I think that would have been the way to go. Instead of me selecting and just saying create a table, I probably should have went in there and renamed the table something unique. But I would have to make it unique by spreadsheet, because if I call it table 1 every time, it's not going to allow me to create a table called table 1 in this worksheet. Do you guys know what I'm saying? Because there's already one in another worksheet. So I would have to base it on like maybe the worksheet tab, you know, week 1 underscore table 1. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's a unique name. I'm not real sure how it could do that, to tell you the truth. But that's the issue with that. Okay, that's the issue with that. If we delete these 3 lines, okay, these are the lines that are causing us problems, right? So let's delete these 3 lines. And then save this guy. So save a file with these features, click no, and then choose a macro enable file type. So I'm going to click no, and I want to pick a macro enabled type here. I'm going to X out of that. Let's make another copy of this guy. Now let's look at our macro. Just to make sure I saved it without the last 3 lines, and it looks like I did. And now let's try running it. Okay. Now it didn't crap out. Bend, but it also didn't do exactly what I was hoping it would do, right? So what I'd probably have to do, I'd have to figure out the code to say assign a unique name to that table instead of just giving it table 1 every time. Because anytime I do it, it's not going to call it table 1. It's going to call it, hey, there's already a table 1, so it's going to shove table 1-1 after it. And then it's going to look for table 1 later and say, hey, there is no table 1, which is kind of silly, but that's what you get for trying to add on something. So I have to figure that out. Okay. Let's say edit the macros. Okay. I think that's it. That's all we really want to do for that one. So that's done. Okay. Submit. Save it as Make sure it's the same as a macro-enabled workbook, XLS, XM. I gotta write that down, let's learn through it. And upload it to Blackboard. Now, on Monday, I may be a little late on Monday. I'm gonna be here, but I have an appointment in the morning in Johnstown. It should be done at 8:15, so I should be getting here, but I might be here a little bit late. Okay, so it's a lab day, so just because I'm not here doesn't mean you can't be here. And I'm gonna show up. Might be 5-10 minutes late, but I'll be here Monday. Okay, so all you have for Monday is the out-of-class quiz for Module 8, and also there's Case 2 is an out-of-class case for Module 8. All right. So have a great weekend, and I'll see you real soon. I don't have it open?
No.
Yeah, let me do that right now.
At least on mine this morning when I opened it, it said it was, I came up with that warning message.
Yeah, you're right.
Thank you.
Wait a minute.